The streets of Chicago buzzed with the energy of another bustling weekday. Cars honked, vendors shouted out prices, and hurried pedestrians moved in a seemingly endless stream. Among them was Jason, a young man in his early 20s, his shoulders hunched against the cold wind. His worn-out jacket and scuffed sneakers bore silent testimony to the harsh realities of his life. Jason had been struggling to make ends meet ever since his parents passed away in a car accident 3 years ago, leaving him to fend for himself. Jobs were scarce, and opportunities even scarcer for someone who had dropped out of college to care for his ailing mother before her passing. Jason's stomach growled as he walked past a food truck, the smell of sizzling bacon wafting in the air. He patted his pocket, feeling the crumpled $20 bill, the last of his money until he could find work again. Desperation clawed at him, but he kept moving, determined to hold on to what little he had left. That's when he saw him. The man sat slumped in a wheelchair near the corner of Fifth Avenue. His frail frame was wrapped in a tattered blanket, and a cardboard sign lay across his lap. "Homeless, hungry, please help." Jason slowed his pace, his heart squeezing at the sight. People walked past without sparing the man a glance, their eyes fixed straight ahead. Jason hesitated, torn between his own needs and the gnawing empathy that stirred within him. He approached cautiously. "Hey," Jason said, his voice uncertain. The man looked up, his face weathered and lined with the kind of sorrow that spoke of years spent battling the elements. His eyes, however, held a flicker of something unspoken, something that Jason couldn't quite place. "God bless you," the man rasped. "Anything helps." Jason's fingers tightened around the $20 in his pocket. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. Yet, as he looked into the man's eyes, he felt a wave of shame. How could he deny this person a chance at a hot meal when he still had the ability to walk, work, and survive another day? Without overthinking it, Jason pulled the bill from his pocket and pressed it into the man's hand. "Here," he said, forcing a smile. "It's not much, but I hope it helps." The man stared at the bill, then back at Jason, as if trying to decipher the young man's intentions. "Thank you," he whispered. "You didn't have to do that?" Jason shrugged. "We all need a little help sometimes. Take care of yourself, all right?" He turned to leave, but the man's voice stopped him. "Wait," he called out. Jason turned back, puzzled. The man's demeanor had shifted. He sat up straighter in his wheelchair, his earlier frailty seeming to dissolve like a mask falling away. "What's your name, kid?" "Jason," he replied, his brow furrowing. "Why?" The man's lips curled into a smile, and to Jason's astonishment, he rose from the wheelchair with ease. Gone was the haggard, defeated figure he had just handed his last $20 to. In his place stood a man radiating an air of confidence and authority. Jason's mouth fell open as the man folded the blanket neatly and tucked it under his arm. "You're probably wondering what's going on," the man said, his voice no longer raspy, but firm and commanding. "The name's Edward Livingston, and let's just say, I'm not exactly who you thought I was." Jason blinked, trying to process the surreal turn of events. You're not homeless," he stammered. Edward chuckled. "Far from it. I'm a businessman, and if we're being honest, I'm also a multimillionaire. But every so often, I like to test humanity, to see if people are still willing to give, even when they don't have much to spare. And you, my friend, just passed with flying colors." Jason's head spun. Was this some kind of elaborate prank? "But why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Edward's expression softened. "Because I've learned that true character is revealed in moments of sacrifice. You could have walked away, kept your money for yourself, but you didn't. That tells me you're someone worth investing in." "Investing?" Jason echoed, still struggling to believe what he was hearing. Edward nodded. "How would you like an opportunity to change your life?" "I'm offering you a job, Jason. Not just any job, but a chance to work with me directly. There's a lot to discuss, but first, let's get you something to eat. You look like you could use a good meal." Jason's stomach growled again, louder this time, as if agreeing with Edward's suggestion. He felt a mix of emotions: disbelief, hope, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude. For the first time in years, it felt like his life was about to take a turn for the better. As they walked together toward a nearby diner, Jason couldn't help but glance at Edward, still half expecting the man to vanish into thin air. But Edward was real, and so was the opportunity he had just been given. Little did Jason know, this was only the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would test his courage, challenge his values, and lead him to places he had never imagined. The diner was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. The smell of fresh coffee and frying bacon filled the air as Jason followed Edward to a booth near the back. As they settled in, Jason's thoughts raced. Was this some kind of scam, a cruel joke? But the warmth in Edward's eyes and the sincerity in his demeanor made it hard to hold on to his doubts. A waitress appeared, pen poised over her notepad. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" she asked with a polite smile. "Get whatever you like," Edward said, nodding at Jason. "My treat." Jason hesitated, then ordered a modest plate of eggs and toast. Edward, on the other hand, ordered a hearty breakfast platter with all the trimmings. As the waitress left, Edward leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Tell me about yourself, Jason," he said. "No fluff, no rehearsed answers, just the truth." Jason shifted uncomfortably. "There's not much to tell," he said with a shrug. "I'm just a guy trying to get by. My parents died a few years ago, and things have been tough since then." Edward listened intently, his expression unreadable. "What do you want out of life?" he asked. Jason's brow furrowed. It was a question he hadn't allowed himself to think about in a long time. Survival had been his only focus. "I guess I just want to feel like I'm not wasting my time," he admitted. "To do something that matters." Edward nodded thoughtfully. "And if you had the resources to change your circumstances, what would you do?" Jason hesitated, then spoke with quiet conviction. "I'd help people. People like me who feel stuck, who just need a chance to prove themselves. Life hasn't been fair to me, but maybe I could make it fairer for someone else." A smile spread across Edward's face. "You've got a good heart, Jason. That's rare these days, and it's exactly why I'm offering you this opportunity." Before Jason could respond, the waitress returned with their food, setting the plates down with a cheerful, "Enjoy!" The sight of the warm meal made Jason's stomach clench with hunger, and he dug in gratefully. Edward ate at a more leisurely pace, watching Jason with an appraising eye. "Here's the deal," Edward said, setting his fork down. "I run a company that specializes in turning ideas into reality. We invest in people, not just businesses. What I see in you is potential, raw, untapped potential. But potential alone isn't enough. It takes hard work, resilience, and the willingness to step outside your comfort zone. Do you think you're up for the challenge?" Jason swallowed a mouthful of toast, his mind racing. I think so. But why me? I'm just some broke guy you met on the street." Edward's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. You're someone who understands what it means to struggle, to fight for every inch. That's the kind of person who can inspire others, who can lead. I'm not offering you charity, Jason. I'm offering you a partnership. Are you in?" Jason's heart pounded. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, But for the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. He met Edward's gaze and nodded. "I'm in." Edward grinned. "Good. Then let's get started." Little did Jason know the road ahead would be anything but easy. Edward's tests would push him to his limits, challenging everything he thought he knew about himself. But as he sat in that diner, a plate of eggs and toast in front of him, and a glimmer of possibility in his heart, Jason felt ready to face whatever came next. Jason's journey with Edward began the very next day. Edward introduced him to a world Jason had only seen from a distance. Boardrooms filled with polished professionals, endless networking events, and discussions about ideas Jason could barely comprehend at first. It was overwhelming, but Edward was patient. He made it clear that Jason's success would depend on his ability to learn, adapt, and, most importantly, stay true to himself. The first challenge came in the form of a business proposal Edward handed him. "This," Edward said, sliding a thick file across the desk, "is a failing community center. It's drowning in debt, but it's also the heart of its neighborhood. I want you to figure out how to save it." Jason's stomach churned. "Me? I don't know the first thing about running a business." Edward smiled. "That's the point. You've got 3 weeks. Start by talking to the people it serves. Find out what they need, and remember, the answer isn't always in the numbers." Over the next 3 weeks, Jason threw himself into the project. He spent hours at the community center, talking to families, seniors, and kids. He listened to their stories, their struggles, and their hopes. Slowly, a plan began to take shape. He proposed turning unused rooms into rental spaces for local artisans, launching after-school programs funded by grants, and hosting community events to draw in more people. When he presented his proposal to Edward, he felt a mix of pride and anxiety. Edward listened without interrupting, then leaned back in his chair, a smile playing at his lips. "Well done," he said. "You've got heart, Jason. And you've got vision. The center's board has agreed to your plan. Let's make it happen." Jason's success with the community center marked the start of a series of challenges, each more complex than the last. Along the way, he faced setbacks that tested his resilience: a rejected proposal, a failed partnership, moments where he doubted himself. But Edward was always there, not to solve his problems, but to remind him of why he started. One of the most unexpected turns came when Jason met Sarah, a volunteer at the community center. She was passionate, driven, and unafraid to challenge him when she thought he was wrong. Their shared mission brought them closer, and what began as mutual respect soon blossomed into something deeper. For the first time, Jason felt like he had found not just a partner in business, but in life. Years later, as Jason stood on the stage of a packed auditorium, addressing a crowd of young entrepreneurs, he thought back to that cold day in Chicago. He had gone from a struggling young man with nothing to his name to a leader making a difference. Edward sat in the front row, beaming with pride, and Sarah stood beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Life isn't about what you have," Jason said, his voice steady. "It's about what you give. It's about the lives you touch, the chances you take, and the courage to believe in something bigger than yourself. I wouldn't be here today if someone hadn't believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. So if you take one thing away from this, let it be this: be the reason someone believes in possibilities." As the audience rose to their feet in applause, Jason felt a deep sense of fulfillment. His journey had been anything but easy, but it had been worth every struggle, every setback. And it all began with a simple act of kindness. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stories of Brilliance. Your support helps us bring you more inspirational tales that shine a light on the extraordinary power of humanity.